Just want to do a quick summary as we transition out of Bin Laden's ideology. Just think this would be a good summary for some of the different interpretations of Islam that we have looked at and different views. I'm going to start here, though, with 1979 and why 1979 was a crucial year. You have some events like the revolution in Iran. You have the Camp David Accords, which creates a peace between Egypt and Israel. And an event that we haven't addressed so far in class is the siege at the Grand Mosque in Saudi Arabia, 1979, November to December. And their goal here, they wanted to overthrow the Saudi family, and they wanted to sever ties between Saudi Arabia and the West. And we also have, of course, the Soviet-Afghan War, which we looked at in great detail prior classes. So for this slide, I just looked at the evolution of Al-Qaeda's brand of Islam, and keep in mind it is their view, and their view is rooted in these other three, these two other strands of Islam that we've already talked about: the Wahhab sect, which the purification, the Salafi, looking at the ancestors, and the Takfir, which pretty much this last one. This is not a strand of Islam, but what this here is, if we take a look at this word, an apostate is a person who renounces religion or political belief. This is where we get that idea of the good Muslim. The good Muslim and the bad Muslim. So the good Muslim would be the one that is following the religion. And again, this is according to Al-Qaeda's brand of Islam here. And the bad Muslim would be anybody that's engaging in sin, anybody that's not praying, anybody that's not following the religion. So we'll look at some of these ideas or examples later on, especially when we look at the bio on the 9/11 hijackers. And I just took this slide here, and I wanted to, if we looked at the modernity and the heavy emphasis on the golden age, we have already addressed this in class. Remember the modernity that is going back to Sayyid Qutb's milestones with the purification of the religion, with the ancestors of Islam. Your ability to go back and find historic examples of Muslims doing great things definitely is going to be something that is going to act as inspiration. In class, we looked at the story of Saladin during the Crusades, who defended against the Christian army, trying to take over Jerusalem and purge the Muslim population from the holy place. We also see Abdullah Azzam. We had already talked about him and his idea of your obligation as a Muslim. And all of these, 1979, these beliefs, interpretations, whatever we want to call them, they definitely have an impact on Osama Bin Laden, who then writes his fatwa, which is the point of today's class. And we also can then look at another Al-Qaeda member, al-Suri, who writes this piece, The Global Islamic Resistance, which outlines how Al-Qaeda is going to fight. And I also want to stress that they're taking the ideas of Abdullah Azzam, who is saying, we are going to look at the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan, and we're going to argue that Muslims around the world have an obligation to travel and then help us fight against the non-believers. And in that case, the non-believers would be Russia as a result of their invasion of Afghanistan. Bin Laden would travel there, as we already addressed. But for the most part, Bin Laden is going to take Abdullah Azzam's views and apply them not to Afghanistan, but then to the world, with a view of defending Muslims from abroad. And part of the reason is going to be about how can Muslims, in Bin Laden's view, deal with modernity. When you see this particular word, it's looking at society in its modern form. So if we take things like the internet, and we've already addressed this in another class, if we have that path of religion, trying to stay on that path and trying to follow the Quran precisely the way, it's written, and doing everything that's asked of you as a good Muslim, Then the internet, a cell phone, can get you off the path, and we've looked at that. So modernity is looking at the modern complications. What is happening in society currently that is creating a situation where it becomes problematic for Muslims to be that good Muslim. We definitely see references to historical leaders, as I've addressed before, and that is going to act as a way to inspire individuals. And so at this point here, this is kind of what Abdullah Azam was arguing when he argued that you had an obligation. You have an individual obligation to help the Mujahideen in Afghanistan. And if you don't, he argued in his piece, well, you better not pray. So if praying is a part of a Muslim's obligation, an individual obligation, he's arguing that he doesn't even consider you to be a Muslim. And that's what makes this so devastating, and possibly the reason why some individuals would try to follow some of these ideas. And again, depending on their age. So Bin Laden has his influence in Azam. Azam is influenced by Saeed Qutb. So definitely seem to have a focus on history. When you take that with the events going on in 1979, when Bin Laden is about 22, 23 years old, definitely going to be influential. Looking at that Islamic revitalization movement, that is going to probably put him in a position where he's going to take Azam's ideas and then apply them on a global scale.